Hey guys, welcome back to the Mariana Trench, where we dive deep into issues facing the nation. Um, and thank you to my loyal 8 subscribers. I really love you. I haven't posted in a while, but I felt like talking about my voting decision. I've always been open about that and why I decided to vote for Biden. I had been really wrestling with voting third party. I knew that I didn't want to vote. I couldn't really fully in full faith back Trump, even though there are some things that I do want to talk about in terms of things that I actually think he did right. Again, I call out very few liberal journalists from the media, but I really appreciate Van Jones doing the same. I think he always gives credit where credit's due, and so I do tend to follow him. And I just think he's a smart guy overall. I don't agree with on everything with him, but out of all of like the leftist journalists that I follow, and I follow everybody. I follow everybody from Democracy Now all the way up through Breitbart. I follow CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, um, CNN, Fox News, Breitbart. In terms of print media, I follow the New York Times. I follow, my local paper. I get my local paper every Wednesday and Sunday. Um, I follow, Breitbart also publishes uh, print media, the Blaze, um, everything in between, because unfortunately, I think in our society, we do not have um, sustainable balanced news. You have to kind of figure out where people are and not stay in your bubble, um, which is tough. It's tough to do because a lot of times you don't agree with these people and you think they're outside of their mind on both sides. I find uh, media journalism has just, there's no like straightforward news anymore. It's always leaned, it's always laden with opinion, it's always laden with commentary on both sides. Hannity does it, Cuomo does it. Like you can't find just a legitimate straight what is the news anymore. And so I follow everything, and I think I tend to try to maintain like a little bit more global perspective rather than just like sticking in my silo all the time. That's a tangent, but what I really wanted to say and what I really wanted to kind of point out is that after being very objective about everything, I and wanting to lean third party or leave it blank. There was actually an interesting article in the Arizona Republic, yesterday's article, that said I think over 40,000 Arizonans left the that uh, box or that bubble blank, voted down ballot, didn't even bother. And so I consider that too, and I think that was a very interesting article for me because it um, kind of highlighted the issues that people are having with this election. I also personally, a lot of people are talking about the Latinos came out to vote, the Black America came out to vote, and here in Arizona, I think a lot of what's not being talked about is Cindy McCain, and a lot of Trump supporters are going to say, "Oh, she's just a rhino. She's Republican in name only." Uh, I don't agree with that. When you're starting to call George the Bushes rhinos, when you're starting to call Condoleezza Rice a rhino, when you're starting to call the McCains rhinos, then I just think that you're in a completely separate party all your own. I don't necessarily think Trump is a Republican Party at all. He leans, on certain policies that way, but he does spend a lot. He does a lot of things that are not conventional for Republicans. So I'm not going to talk about that now, but again, I'm going to pull it back to why I decided to vote third party, and really my strategy in the past few months was to continue, reading all of my various news sources, which takes a lot of time to do, and then also stop social media in terms of politicians. So, I mean, I'm still on social media at the time, but I stopped following Trump's tweets. I stopped following AOC because that's another thing. I follow everybody. I follow AOC. I follow Trump. I follow McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz. Who else? Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all of those accounts I follow. So I stopped following him. And as you know, a big way that Trump communicates with his followers is through social media, through Twitter. So when I stopped following that and I started reading various news articles across the board, I started developing, my thought that it was okay not to support him outright, but that I could vote third party, and then, whatever. Basically, my vote wouldn't count, and whoever we ended up with, because I didn't like Biden either. I think a lot of what's said about him is true. He's been in office in various positions throughout the government for a very long time, and um, you know, I was really afraid that if he were to attain power in the executive, and even though as much as I can't stand Mitch McConnell, and I actually sent money to the McGrath campaign because that's how much I can't stand that guy, um, to vote him out, I did think that if we didn't somehow retain power in the Senate, which is up for grabs right now in Georgia with the runoff, that we would be now moving into this far leftist landslide, which is pretty much the same situation that we're in with Trump on the opposite side. Now, leftists are going to say, absolutely not. There's nothing in comparison to Trump. He's the worst end all be all. But there's some crazies on the left too. And I didn't want to have Biden and a centrist like Biden and Kamala Harris be pulled into a leftist landslide because we weren't able to retain the Senate. So I thought about that. I thought about, what if we don't have, as a Republican, what if I don't have, what if we go down that path? Um, and especially with the leftist rhetoric this past year, regardless of whether you agree or disagree or not, I thought, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had many videos that talked about we need to kind of be more uh, in tune with some of the police brutality issues that are going on, some of the racial issues that are going on. But the leftist solutions, and I've talked about this before plenty of times, which were, at the height of those issues to um, defund the police, that wasn't good. That's why I picked Kamala. That's why she was actually my pick, because I'm like, she's going to be centrist enough to be like, we need to think about these issues, but being a former prosecutor, she was never going to be in line with defunding the police. So that was something that I was like, okay, packing the courts. Now I understand there's a lot of politics played on the Republican side, specifically with regard to the courts. And I've talked about this before. If we were going to um, weigh different alternatives with, thinking about the Electoral College and whether to abolish that or revise that or whatever, thinking about how to reframe the courts and whether we need more representation on the courts because, we have a bigger population. I mean, the courts were put in place, the way that they were back when we were a very small country. So maybe that's something to think about. But as a political tactic, in counter to something that Mitch McConnell did, which was withhold nomination, and then, when they have power, proceed with nomination because they're in line with the executive branch, that, as much as hard as it is to say, I don't agree that you should be playing politics as retaliation to do that. And I feel like Democrats, both sides, again, both sides do this, but Nancy Pelosi saying we have arrows in our quiver or whatever the hell she said, that means to me that she's just looking for a play, and all politicians do that, but that's not something that I want to mess with. I read an article that most of Americans have faith in the executive branch, or I'm sorry, in the judicial branch more than either of the other two branches. And, the court's in a unique position right now to hold on to that. I, as naive as I may be, want to preserve that. And I think that if you start playing politics with the court like that just to get back at whoever screwed you when you were in Congress, we're going to go down a very dark path. So that was another thing, and Kamala and Biden would not speak to that clearly. And I thought if I go Biden and he gets elected, and then we don't retain the Senate, um, we're going to be in big trouble because that's going to be on the table. And he's not going to be able to fall back on, well, we have to negotiate here because we have, a Republican majority Senate. So we can't just drive through all of these very, very liberal progressive policies that I don't necessarily agree with. Um, he would have a much harder time within his own party saying no to certain things. So I wrestled back and forth with it. I mean, this was like, I was up at night trying to figure out what the hell was I going to do. Another thing that bothered me is, as much as I gave money to the McGrath campaign to get effing Mitch McConnell out of there because he's just a roadblock to everything, um, I really liked Mark Kelly. So that was another thing, and he grew up with two parents as cops. He's an astronaut. He's a patriot. He served his country. And he was Republican for a long time, turned independent, and then decided to run on the Democratic ticket. And so I thought, and his whole pitch, both in the debates and throughout his, even in his acceptance speech, when he was, accepting um, the the votes for to be senator, he said, we need independence in Washington. We need to be independent. We need independent leadership. We need to stop with this bipartisan stuff. And so I really went with that. As naive as I am, we don't know how he's going to perform. This is the first time in office serving in a senator, whatever. But I thought, we'll see what he does. I'll give him a shot. But at the same time, it's like, well, if I vote for him, then, that lessens. And if everybody else in Arizona is kind of voting on the same lines, then that lessens our chance to kind of keep balance within the within all branches of government. And as much as our framers built in tension and inefficiency into our government because of the fact that there's political parties that can retain power in various parts of the government, the House, the Senate, the executive, the judicial branch, even though they're not supposed to lean a certain way, but depending on how they interpret the law, they kind of do. That at the very least, it ensures checks and it ensures balance. And I think I would be comfortable, and I think a lot of people voted down ballot Republican, which is what we've seen. We picked up 9 seats in the House. We're pretty much retained most of the seats in the Senate. We'll see what happens with Georgia. And I think that was a big message. Now, if you believe in the voter fraud and all that stuff and widespread voter fraud, then there's nothing I can say about that to you. There's no solution that I can give you that you're going to believe me. 2018, the same thing happened. I remember Hannity talking over and over and over, oh my gosh, the Democrats just won't accept the results of the election. They're undermining our democracy by saying there's voter fraud everywhere, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, we're supposed to have faith in our voting system. And the Democrats do the same thing. For 4 years, we've been hearing Russia intervention, blah, 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 blah. So this, to me, this whole voter fraud thing, it's not news to me. I knew this was going to happen. I expected it to happen. There's always challenges. Now, the difference is that our president is not conceding. Usually you can proceed with challenges to, the voting counts and all of that stuff, and still concede in order to allow, the next elect to kind of retain access to or obtain access to certain things, get the briefings, all of that stuff. He's not doing that. And so I think even though I expected the challenges and the claims of voter fraud all over the place, because both parties did it, they did in 2018, they did in 2016. This has been happening since the dawn of our democracy. Whoever wins, the other side claims voter fraud widespread. So that wasn't new to me. But what is new to me is the fact that he's not conceding. And I think that's a huge, interesting turn of events. And I kind of expected that too. I didn't know how far he would go with it, but he continues to not concede and he continues to fight it. And this is the first time we haven't seen it. We haven't seen him in the press. I mean, he's been tweeting. But, is this the onset of a coup with him, firing everybody who disagreed with him? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. And I'm very kind of on my toes about how this is all going to unfold. I mean, I hate to say that it's exciting, but it kind of is in a very kind of dark way. I hope that there's a peaceful transition of power. I hope that everything goes smoothly and the truth comes to light. And I think he has every right, every um, duty, really, to challenge anything that has underlying substance to it. Now, whether he produces evidence or not, and I think that the claim that widespread voter fraud is occurring without pursuing a challenge, without having the opportunity to investigate, is very um, irresponsible. But that's a whole other ball game. Um, and so, all this to say, I decided to go with Biden because um, there one thing pushed me over the edge. After all of my research, after reading all these different sides and kind of getting, more of an objective view on where everybody leans and kind of being like, okay, well, whatever. People are kind of just in their lanes, in their siloed lanes. And I was really trying to get all the bigger picture. So there are certain arguments that I was going to expect. There's certain things that was just like, okay, you know, there's going to be half the countries that's just not going to accept the election results. Um, but what pushed me over the edge to not vote third party and to actually actively vote for Biden was after everything, after all the stuff, I started looking back at the tweets right before I was about to make my decision to vote third party or not vote at all. And I saw that Trump retweeted a um, conspiracy theory from QAnon or whatever, which is loony bin stuff. But QAnon basically saying that the SEAL Team 6 assassination of Osama bin Laden was a hoax. And that to me was a straw that broke the camel's back. There had been a similar tweet where he reposted the person saying, Trump, whatever, he's on a golf cart and then spread white power. That to me was just like, why are you retweeting this stuff? Why are you retweeting? It's hard for people to say, look at what you did with funding BCUs. Look what you did with, reforming the criminal justice system. Look what you did with opportunity zones and how that's actually creating investment in, uh, you know, lower income parts of cities and economies, which is something that the Democrats have not done in their cities. It's hard to defend those types of policy actions when you're retweeting stuff like this. So for me, it's not about the economy. People keep saying, "Oh, we can defend Trump because of the economy. We can defend Trump because, you know, whatever. He's hard on China. He's this." I don't care. If you were that unhinged as a leader, where you could have used Twitter to your advantage, you could have said, "You know what? The press is against me. The press has been giving me shit since day one, and therefore I'm going to release all of my policy stuff on Twitter, and I'm going to explain it on Twitter, and I'm going to have a whole team dedicated to Twitter to make sure that we're utilizing this tool appropriately so that we can spread the truth about certain things and underlying policies in order to get our perspective out because we're not being represented by the media correctly." And I criticize the media. There's no balanced just news. But if you go to Fox, if you go to CNN, you go anywhere, it's unbalanced. It's awful. It's opinion. That's all it is. It's just editorial opinions all day long. There's nobody saying, here's what the Trump administration is doing, here's what the Biden administration is doing. You guys make the choice. It's Don Lemon telling me how to feel. It's Cuomo telling me how to feel. It's Hannity telling me how to feel. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so he had a very good opportunity to actually utilize social media in a good way. And he failed to do it. And I personally think that is a making of an unhinged president. And he could have made his case so much better. Being a businessman that he is, being a practical person that he is, to say, I need to get this message out, and here's how I'm going to do it. We're going to release press statements from the White House. I'm going to give news conferences, not to the press, but filmed and released on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. And we're not going to talk to the press. I would have been fine with that. But instead, you retweet stuff like the assassination of Osama bin Laden is a hoax and white power. There is no way that I could defend all of the good things that you did under this presidency with that kind of rhetoric and with that kind of unhinged mentality.
So I think that was an abuse of power. I think it was an unresponsible abuse of power. I don't care how the economy's doing. I don't want somebody like that representing me. I don't want like somebody like that in office. And all of these people who are now coming out from the woodwork saying, oh, blaming all these conspiracy theories, and you're not calling that out, I cannot support that in good faith. And I could not vote party over what's right, in my view. So, I had my sister in law asking me, hey, I thought you were going to vote Republican. I thought you were going to not vote at all. Calling me and saying, like, what drove you to this? And so, to my 8 loyal subscribers, I thought I would talk about that for a little bit and, uh, and, um, and really kind of just give a perspective on why I made the choice that I did, and I don't regret it. And if you want to call me a Republican in name only, I'm glad to be that if this is how we're going to be represented um, going forward. So, I might switch Democrat next year. I might switch Independent. I'm still registered Republican, and I might switch because this is not okay. This kind of rhetoric, this kind of dangerous rhetoric from a leader of the free world, when we have all of our eyes watching. I was talking to, I was on a work call, and I was talking to a colleague in the UK, and she's like, "How are you doing? I haven't talked to you in a few weeks. I feel like it's been a really long time." And I was like, "Yeah, um, it's been pretty crazy here. I've been really busy with work. I've been losing sleep because we have a very contentious election going on here, and so we're all going to bed at midnight, waking up at 3, 4 in the morning to watch if there's been election changes or changes to the results." And she's like, "Oh, all of us are losing sleep. Everyone around the world is losing sleep because we're all on our toes about what's happening in the U.S." And it made me think so long and hard about the presence that we have in the rest of the world. There's that famous saying where, if um, the US sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. I never felt that until she made that statement. And it was so interesting to me that everybody has their eyes on us. Everybody has their eyes on us to uphold democracy, to be the beacon of democracy around the world. And when you have somebody this unhinged undermining that and at all costs in an irresponsible way, I cannot in good faith support that. So I don't care how great the economy is doing, which I don't think it is. There's people on food lines. I mean, when you look at a practical perspective, Isaiah and I, when the summer was here, he went to go get paletas because he wanted some paletas, and right next door there was a Saint Vincent de Paul, uh, operating site, and he said the cars were out hours hours long onto the street trying to get food, a bag of food. I mean, we're very lucky American Express has not made any cuts this year, but so many people made cuts, and I understand that's a COVID issue, but stop talking about the economy. People are hurting. People are down and out. And I'm not saying it's the government's job to sweep in and save the world, but you can't keep this rhetoric about the economy when people are trying to get back on their feet. So to me, the rhetoric is what really pushed me over the edge. And you know what? I'll take my chances with Biden. We'll see what he does in 4 years. I hope to God that we retain the Senate because then we'll have some balance and we won't go into a freaking leftist landslide. But that's why I made my decision and I feel good about it. And you know what? All this stuff about, he did this and he did that and oh, he doesn't need to be nice. No, he doesn't. But he needs to be responsible and he cannot do what he did at the citizens' expense. In my view, this is all my opinion. Half the world will, half the country will disagree with me because they voted for him. But, you know, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because it was a very hard decision to make and I made it. And I hope to God we put up a candidate who I can fully back on the Republican side because there's still a lot of policy issues that I agree with. Um, and I don't want, to get into a socialist nightmare. So that's, something that I look forward to in 2024. But in the meantime, we're going to see what this guy does, which I'm nervous about it too. You know, there's certain things he's already talking about going back into the Paris Climate Accord. Now, I'm not saying that I don't agree with, uh, going in an environmentalist direction. I mean, my husband and I have been saving because we want to buy a Tesla. You know what I'm saying? That we have a truck and we want to kind of balance it out to make sure that we're being responsible. And I want a Tesla. If I'm gonna get a new car, I don't have a car right now. I gave my car to my mom and I don't have a car right now and I'm fine with it because we're in COVID and I work from home and we don't really need another car. But next year, I was just like, I'm not gonna buy another car unless it's what I want. And what I want is a Tesla. So we need to save for it. So we've been saving for it. And so I'm all about climate. I recycle. I do all of the things that I need to do as a personal, like responsible human to make sure that I'm doing my part in terms of climate. I know we need to scale that and we need to have something better on, on a larger scale. I think private industries could help there. I think Arizona, some of the individual states could help there. There's no reason why we shouldn't be solar everywhere here in Arizona. So there's certain things that, yeah, but is the Paris Climate Accord, I actually thought that was a good thing that Trump challenged. What are we getting out of this? What are the results here? And how much are we paying into it? And what are we getting out of it? So I thought that was the right question to ask. And pulling out was, without getting answers to those questions, was the right move. But now we're just automatically we're gonna go right back in it. We have a negotiation. We have the ability to negotiate now, and we're not. We're just going to go right back into that thing without even questioning whether the policy to move out and do something else, put something new and innovative in place here in the United States would be better. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the reason why Pennsylvania, fracking, Texas with oil, why they're so scared to move anywhere in terms of a climate change direction is because our leaders are lacking the ability to tie that to jobs that would be created if we went into a climate change direction. In Texas, we could invest in Texas, say we're going to pull off oil, but all of the employees, all of the workers, the labor unions, all of that stuff that are here concentrated on oil, we will transition them to this new thing and your jobs won't go away. But everybody's failing to make that connection. So I feel like, with Biden, it's just going to be like, let's just go down the old damn path again and see where that gets us. And there's nothing new and innovative. That's why I was so pissed that it's like, okay, we're going with the old white guy. This is the best the Democratic Party had to put up was the old white guy who has no new ideas, no new nothing. And here we're going to be stuck with this guy because we don't want Trump. Both parties have failed here. My party has failed to put up a candidate that we can back without reservation, and the freaking Democrats just keep putting up the same old white guy while barking about diversity and blacks need opportunity to hold high office. You had the opportunity. You wanted Kamala in power, then you should have voted for her to be the president elect or candidate. So, anyways, that's my piece. I have to go because I'm obviously getting a call.